Today we had a suggestion for Champion's Charge, and that's a really good one. It's a 7 provision Skellige raid, so it has some raid synergies. Deal 5 damage to a unit, Bloodthirst 3, destroy a unit instead. So, basically there's two things with Champion's Charge. If you do 5 damage, the card is really bad. If you destroy a unit, destroying a unit's really good. So, I guess to take a look at it first, we should mention the raid synergies. So if you look at the raids, the synergies that it has, you can get it off of Vabjorn, which is good. You can get Vabjorn off Blood Eagle. That's a lengthy combo. And the other one is your Highland Warlord. It can boost the damage on your raid cards for the rest of the game, which makes this gain from 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9. Worth noting, this is probably the worst card in the game to have boosted by Highland Warlord, just because you want the destroy effect, so getting extra damage is kind of meaningless. So you don't have to do the, doesn't matter if you don't have Highland Warlords in your deck or anything. So, yeah, like I was saying though, if you does 5 damage, that's really bad, right? Because 5 damage, you've got Stunning Blow. That does 5 damage for 5 provisions, it's a bronze, and it has bonus damage to armor, or this would just do 5. So, you really never want to use the damage effect. But it is there if you can't meet the destroy condition, which is nice. Now, that being considered, let's look at the Bloodthirst 3 effect. This is the good effect. As the effect to destroy a unit, if we look at the other cards that can destroy stuff, the ones that really come to mind as a comparison are going to be some of the Geralt cards, right? Like, Rivia destroys, Geralt of Rivia rather, destroys a unit with 9 or more power. Curse of Corruption destroys the highest, that's a 9. Obviously, you got Igni up here too, and Scorch and such. The most comparable one is probably kind of Imlerith's Wrath. Imlerith's Wrath is a good comparison, and maybe Serpent Trap are the closest ones. The reason why is these are the cards, especially Imlerith's Wrath, these are the ones I want to compare it to. And I guess Glorious Hunt. These are the destroy cards that are out the same provision range. Brayhand too, but these are the ones we want to look at. So, at 7 provisions, Champion's Charge is one of the cheapest of these. These other ones down here, by the way, usually just destroy themselves, or we have the poison. So we're just going to look at the gold ones here. Look at these destroy effects. So, Champion's Charge is the cheapest, other than good old Vanamar here. Well, if you've locked a unit, usually, well, Vanamar is interesting anyway. But, as a comparison to the destroy cards, it's one of the cheaper ones at 7 provisions. Same as Serpent Trap and Black Blood, and the Imperial Manticore. It's fine. Black Blood, good in Toussaint Hospitality. Recommend trying it out if you haven't. Serpent Trap's good in traps. And then Manticore is good in Deathwish decks. And then Vanamar doesn't see much play anymore, but he used to be pretty decent as well. So, Champion's Charge then, the Bloodthirst 3 condition, and we'll kind of... Champion's Charge really comes down to just Bloodthirst 3 condition compared to the other destroy effects in the game. So, Deathwish, easier to set up. Black Blood, easier to set up because of Toussaint Hospitality. Without the Toussaint Hospitality leader charge, this is much more awkward. And actually probably harder to do effectively in Champion's Charge. The opponent will just boost a weak unit. And Serpent Trap is the highest power unit after they play a special card. A lot of opponents will play a special card, but not all of them. So, it's a decent one. Brayhand is, they have to have the unit, has to be the end of the unit. And the unit has to be on the end of the row, but you move the unit, and then moving it moves it to the end of the row. So that takes a little bit of setup, and they have to have a certain number of units. Ike here. If you have a dragon in hand, let's be honest here, no one has a dragon in their hand. And then the other one here is Glorious Hunt and Imlerith's Wrath. So, Glorious Hunt, highest base power. That's a tactic. You don't see this one very much. Imlerith's Wrath, though, you do see, and it has a destroy with a condition. This one's kind of similar, right, to the raid. They're both special cards. This one has a condition where if you don't meet the frost condition, it also has a secondary effect, right? It does damage by the highest power of your unit. That's a lot. This one's the Imlerith's Wrath's most similar charge, in my opinion, because you have a condition damage if you don't meet the frost requirement, and Champion's Charge has a damage if you don't meet the Bloodthirst requirement. So these two are really similar. The difference being that Imlerith's Wrath's Frost is easier to set up than a Bloodthirst 3. And one of the big differences here is it's much easier to set up in a short round. You can just save a leader charge and frost something, then destroy it with this in round 3, like a 3-card round 3. A 3-card round 3, you can't do that with this. It's almost impossible to get a Bloodthirst 3 in a 3-card round 3. It is possible. There's some other destroy effects, right? You've got like Junod, Curse Corruption, such, Kennet, Vilgefortz, Moriels. But really, I want to compare, I think, to Ymlaris Wrath, because they're both specials with a 2 damage options, one being conditional. To be fair, the Ymlaris Wrath damage by highest power is also technically conditional, because you have to have a unit, but you're pretty much always going to have a unit, so really the issue with Champion's Charge then comes down to the Bloodthirst 3 condition. If we look at the Bloodthirst 3 condition, how would you set that up? This is where the weakness of the Champion's Charge is, in my opinion. We go to Skellige. Now, there's a couple things you can talk about here. One is Rain. Rain, for example, Fukusha brings out like a whole bunch of turns of Rain if you use it on a bronze. If you put out Rain, Rain often will damage stuff down to being damaged for your Bloodthirst. However, against boost decks, it won't really do that. And then your card's dead. Kind of like Sov. How often do you see Sov do the summon a beast from deck and then destroy it with the infuse, right? You don't always, even with a deck with the damage, you don't always have that much Bloodthirst out there. So that's one thing. You could use something like Artist to give everything the damage, but then again, you're rolling Champion's Charge, and then their stuff's probably got half power anyway. So Rain is a way to damage units, but it's not very consistent, and it takes a long round to get like that many things low. So that's probably not the best way to do it. Now, considering it as a raid card, you could go with the raid deck, right? You might think it'd go in a raid deck, right? You've got these guys in here. Just do a bunch of damage to stuff, set it up with Bloodthirst. But the thing with raid decks is, with Highland Warlords, you want to get your raids so you can just remove all the opponent's engines and just remove their cards for value. And if you're removing stuff, then Champion's Charge won't have the Bloodthirst. And that's not great. So I don't think that's really where he fits in either. Even though it is a raid, I don't think that's where he fits in. And then the other thing you can do in Skellige is we've got raids out of the way. Probably not the best choice. You might be playing them suboptimally if you're going to set up the Champion's Charge with it. And Rain are not the best. So that kind of just leaves like random ping damage and stuff and other effects. But there is... You're all probably guessing by now the one thing I haven't mentioned yet. That's going to be the leaders. Of course, I can't make this... just get rid of this deck. Delete. I don't know what this deck is. But if we go to leaders... And there's 2 here that are pretty obvious. We've got Patricidal Fury. Arnulf the Patricide. He's a 12. He summons 3 Sirens and damages them by 1. That's Bloodthirst 3. So you play Arnulf, you play Champion's Charge. You get a 12. The opponent gets a couple Sirens, and you destroy a unit. By far the most consistent setup. Good value on its own, but Arnulf doesn't see a lot of play. The other one is Reckless Flurry, right? The 3 damage between all enemy units, ignoring armor. This is worse against decks that boost, because Arnulf will always give them the 3 Sirens. So they'll always have 3 damage units. That being said, unless you do it in a row that's full, which would be very silly. Unless you want to give them less points. But Arnulf's really the way to do it. You could, again, try with Reckless Flurry, but Arnulf always will give you the Bloodthirst 3. So, Champion's Charge... That's the best setup for it, but Arnulf the Patricide and Patricidal Fury doesn't see a lot of play, and it just doesn't have a lot of value a lot of the time, because even though you can do stuff like that, it's a one-time leader ability, and it plays a tall card, which isn't always what you want to do. And the other thing I want to mention, before we get into like what we could change about the Champion's Charge, we look at the other Bloodthirst cards. Make sure I've written this out. We look at the other Bloodthirst cards. Right, we've got a bunch of bronzes, right? Some bronzes, blah, blah, blah. Bloodthirst 2 on this guy. I don't know if that's a U or a V, so I'm not going to try and pronounce this. We got Jenga Fret. So we have Bloodthirst 2 for 2 extra damage on this guy. Here's the other Bloodthirst 3. Boost by 5. So for Bloodthirst 3, we're getting 11 for 7. Svangri is pretty good. We got this guy's Bloodthirst 3. Yorn's 2, and Ice is Bloodthirst 3. So here's the 3 Bloodthirst 3 cards you've got. I guess Blood Eagle technically has the Bloodthirst as well, but you're pretty much always setting this up for Deathblow. So Iced, Svangri, and Champion's Charge are Bloodthirst 3 cards. And comparing them, you can kind of see the difference, right? Iced is amazing if you have his Bloodthirst 3. Champion's Charge is pretty good, but just think about Iced. How difficult is it to set up Iced Bloodthirst? A lot of the time you don't have it set up, even with the warriors doing damage. Like, you need a round where you can hit stuff and damage it down with the warrior orders. And you don't see Svangri. Svangri is really the telling one, because 11 for 7 is pretty good. Well, I guess it's okay. This used to be better. But like this, when this first got changed to be 11 for 7, it was pretty good. And no one really played it after trying it out, because the Bloodthirst 3, it was actually too hard to set up to play this guy pretty consistently. And that's Champion's Charge's issue. The Bloodthirst 3 requirement is just too hard to set up. I think that's the issue here. So now that we've talked about all these things, by the way, worth mentioning, in neutral, we'll say in neutral, you do have options like Triss Meteor Shower offensively, and you have, where is Akvist? Not that anyone's going to play Akvist, but there are options like those, which damage everything. Worth mentioning. But back to Champion's Charge and the things with Champion's Charge. So, the effect of Champion's Charge by itself is not bad, right? 5 damage with a conditional destroy. Look at Ymlirith's Wrath. Ymlirith's Wrath is really good. The difference being Ymlirith's Wrath's condition is much easier than this Bloodthirst condition. So the Bloodthirst condition really is the issue here. Bloodthirst 3 is just too difficult. Now, at Bloodthirst 2, I think if they were to change this card, it'd probably be to make it a Bloodthirst 2. Either that or make a new card to play it out of your deck or something and damage the enemy unit. A lot like Sov has, right? It damages an enemy unit and gets a card. Well, you play a card in the same turn as you damage the enemy unit, is what I'm saying. So like, you have a unit that plays this. Like, you play a unit, it damages something, and then you get this guy. Then you can destroy a unit, maybe. But really, I think the Bloodthirst 3 is the issue. So if I wanted to change, if I was going to change Champion's Charge, I think I might just make it Bloodthirst 2. The problem with that is because you gotta be careful, because this is a really strong card, and unlike White Frost and Ymlirith's Wrath, it's not really locked into a leader ability or a specific deck. You might just see all the mid-range Skellige decks running this, because it's a destroy that's under 10 provisions. So you can run this, you can run your Golden Necker, Ciri Nova deck, Magic Compass, and maybe that's too strong. But I think if you wanted to see this, if you wanted this to see play, you make it a Bloodthirst 2. And then you have much more consistency on this destroy effect. The difference between Bloodthirst 2 and 3 is quite a bit. That's probably what I'd go for. The other option is you change the synergy off of Bloodthirst, but I don't think that's going to happen. Because what other synergies do you have in Skellige, right? Maybe if you have a certain number of warriors, it's not going to be a hard condition, and I don't think that would be what they do. I really think it's going to have to be the Bloodthirst. Or you just make it like deal 7 damage or 8 damage or something. But I think the Bloodthirst condition is the issue with Champion's Charge. I think if you want to see play, you change this to Bloodthirst 2. As far as any other changes to cards, I don't think changing provisions or anything will really help. I think it just has to be somewhere in this Bloodthirst. The condition's too hard for the destroy effect. And it would be nice to have, because if you look in the Skellige, you have Yunod, right? He sees a lot of play, especially with the Sov. And Champion's Charge as a way to like trigger the Sov destroy is very interesting. Like, you get the Sov out, and then instead of Yunod, you can use Champion's Charge to destroy the card. Sov will give you that a Bloodthirst by pinging down whatever the opponent's card is. And if this was at Bloodthirst 2, you could just play it right away, because if they have 1 damage unit, use Sov's order, he gives it 1 damage, and then you can hit it with Champion's Charge. I think a Bloodthirst 2 this would be really good. Or at least be playable and pretty good. I think you might, maybe you change the provisions when you do that, but I think Bloodthirst 2 is the answer to this. But anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed. I think that's what I have to say about Champion's Charge. It is a very interesting card. I've played around with it quite a bit. Rather recently, too. But yeah, Champion's Charge is an interesting one. Good suggestion. I think, really, that they would have to see a change to the Bloodthirst to see play. Make it a little easier for that condition. But if you look at comparing it to Ymlirith's Wrath, stuff like that, those have very simple conditions, but they're deck locked. Whereas Champion's Charge really isn't, which might be the problem with giving it buffs like this. But you could also make it deck locked if you wanted to. Anyways, that'll be it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know any more card suggestions you have. What did I miss about Champion's Charge? Have you tried it out? Let me know. That'll be it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time. Make sure that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. And you can check out some more videos over here. And thanks for watching.